Hello, welcome to the Bible K through 12. We're in grade 6. This is the third part, part C. I call this the crisis of evolution. And that will become evident why I call it that. It all starts when Charles Darwin publishes Origin of the Species, in which he pretty much worked through his theory of evolution. That set off a great deal of controversy, a great deal of additional publishing, discussion, and so forth, and really began a track on which many researchers followed their studies to make the case for evolution and to look at specifics, to look at particular organisms or particular ecosystems and so forth. So it was a really big deal in the scientific world, but of course it also was a big deal in the religious world. Many people considered the whole idea of evolution to be contrary to the Genesis account of creation. And so there was a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and so forth. As that continued, there began to be a sort of coalescing of thought among some theologians that, first of all, the Bible was not to be taken literally, that it was to be understood as really a sort of example of what religions can produce and think, and how religious people might think. Sort of in the midst of that, there was an attempt to still rescue Christianity and keep it alive in the face of a very different approach to Scripture and to the understanding of the Christian religion. There developed then a lot of publications, a lot of textbooks, a lot of influence from very knowledgeable people and very people of great influence in developing what became known as modernism. The idea being that, hey, we're modern. We know so much more than we used to know. And so we need to approach the Bible, theology, the doctrines of the church from a very different viewpoint than we would have 200 or 300 years ago. And so modernism began to have powerful inroads in the church in Europe and in America. Well, one of the responses to that was a group of scholars who wanted to establish what they believed were important basic truths about the Bible, about Jesus, about God, about salvation, and so forth. They considered themselves to be responding to modernism. And so they wrote a series of articles that they called the Fundamentals. And these were scholarly writings. They weren't just Bible thumping crazy men, but they were people who had a lot of learning under their belts. And so they began to lay a foundation, as they said, the fundamentals for what they believed was important for Christians and a guidance for the church. Then came the idea of the fundamentalist. Somehow fundamentalism, the fundamentals, began to sort of morph into this label called the fundamentalist. And the fundamentalist was considered not to be a scholar, but to be almost anti-scholarly, to be ignorant, and to be a Bible thumper and a little bit crazy and very uneducated, backwoods kind of person. And that was kind of the picture that a lot of people drew of what a fundamentalist was. In 1925, a man in Tennessee was arrested and charged with violating Tennessee law by teaching evolution in the public schools. His name was Scopes. And the Scopes trial, he was put on trial, became one of the biggest things in that year. William Jennings Bryan, who was a very well-known politician, chose to put himself as the prosecutor. He was from out of state, but the prosecutor moved over and let him take over the case. The defense was led by none less than Clarence Darrow, one of the most famous criminal lawyers. So here we have these really big heavyweights going at each other. It's a battle of the titans. Mr. Scopes fades into the background, so to speak, and it's a big deal of who's going to win this battle. It became not just that kind of epic battle, but it became a circus. In fact, there was a monkey. It became known as the monkey trial because, you know, the idea was that evolution taught that people evolved from monkeys. And so you had to have a monkey, and you had to have a circus, and you had to have strange, corny songs sung to a banjo, and you had to have a film of this madhouse that was going on at the Scopes trial. Eventually, Scopes was found guilty. It was hard to find him anything else. He admitted that he had taught evolution in the public schools, and so he was fined $100. That was appealed, and the case was dismissed because the fine was ruled to be excessive, and that was the end of Mr. Scopes' brush with the law. It all was kind of over, but it was stuck in the memory and the understanding of the American public and even into Europe and beyond. And so we have then fundamentalism versus modernism, but also fundamentalism versus evolution. And we had this constant back and forth. That Scopes was not the only trial that came up. All through the ensuing years, there kept being trials about evolution and so forth.